24th of August in 1986, an historic event occurred. An event of enormous significance not only for Australian rowing but for Australian sport. The Australian 8 won the World Championship. This was the first time since the advent of World Championships in 8s that Australia, a country with a good reputation in rowing and in 8-oared rowing in particular, had won the Blue Ribbon event. Where do you start to look at the history of the World Champion 8? The success was the result of many years of development, both of the individuals and of the training, competition and selection system of rowing in Australia. But let's look at where these oarsmen developed from. You will see from looking at the background of these world champions that there is nothing exceptional about their development, and that given a certain amount of talent, a lot of dedication, the right opportunities and the sportsmanlike attitude of all great Australian champions, young rowers throughout Australia can realistically aim at achieving the very highest rewards in their sport. 22-year-old James Galloway was a member of the Canberra Rowing Club and a scholarship holder at the Australian Institute of Sport. He first represented Australia in the World Junior Championships in 1982 in the coxless pair and came fourth. Malcolm Batten, also 22, is a student and originally learnt to row in Launceston, moving later to the Commercial Rowing Club in Queensland. In 1985 he represented Australia in under-23 competition, winning a silver medal. In the 3-seat, Andrew Cooper, the third AIS member, was aged 21 and had a distinguished schoolboy rowing career at Brighton Grammar before rowing in Victorian Youth 8s and for his club Mercantile. Michael McKay, aged 21, another of the Mercantile Rowing Club oarsmen in the crew, was captain of boats at Xavier College in Melbourne before rowing in Victorian Youth and King's Cup crews and the 1985 Under-23 Australian 8. Mark Doyle was a 23-year-old student when he won the World Championship and had also rowed at Xavier College and Mercantile. In 1982, he and his brother David won a gold medal in Vienna in the International Under-23 coxless pairs. Young James Tomkins had stroked 2 winning King's Cup crews when selected in the 8 in 1986, even though when he raced the heats of the World Championships, he was not yet 21. He was the tallest as well as the youngest in the crew and came from Carey Grammar and the Mercantile Rowing Club in Victoria. In the 7-seat was Popa. His was not a traditional Australian rowing career. He learnt to row in Romania and represented that country before defecting to Australia. He overcame enormous language difficulties and settled in on his own to a new country. He gained selection in the Australian crew in 1983, which won a World Championship bronze medal, and in 1984, which won an Olympic bronze medal. He was aged 29 and rose for Banks Rowing Club in Melbourne. Stephen Evans stroked the crew, as he did in the 1984 bronze medal winning Olympic 8. The Evans name is famous at the Mossman Rowing Club over 3 generations. A student from Beacon Hill High School, he coxed the Australian women's crew in 1973, then represented his club, New South Wales and Australia in junior, youth and open events. He too has not had a traditional rowing background, but one that was destined to see him achieve ultimate success in 1986 at the age of 23. The coxswain is the ears and the eyes of the boat. Dale Caterson, aged 25, was Australia's most experienced cox when selected in the men's 8, having coxed Australian lightweight and heavyweight 8s in the previous 2 years. Dale is a telecommunications technician and coxes for the Sydney Rowing Club. Reinhold Batschi coached the 8 in 1986, as he did when Australia won bronze medals in 1983 and 1984. He, like Popa, is a Romanian who has found his home in Australia and has achieved for his new country success that in Romania would have made him wealthy and powerful. How then does one assemble such a varied group of individuals and select them into a crew of champions? The selection system in Australian rowing is thorough and stringent. All the oarsmen had competed at 3 selection regattas in 3 different states, leading up to the national championships, the final selection regatta in Adelaide in April. There, Stephen Evans won the coxless pairs event. Tomkins, Popa, Doyle and McKay were members of the winning Victorian King's Cup crew, arguably the best boated in recent years. Batten, Cooper and Galloway won the national coxless fours title at the same regatta. All of these men had performed well throughout the selection regattas in coxless pairs and coxed fours, showing consistency of performance, which together with their international experience allowed the selectors to see that they were men who would produce consistent performances internationally in the taxing program of the Lucerne International Regatta, the Commonwealth Games and the World Championships. After selection, which had only been achieved after months if not years of hard work, there was more work and harder work to follow. The 8 trained from the Australian Institute of Sport, where they were accommodated for the months of April until July. There in the brisk mornings and evenings of Canberra, they were a familiar sight training on Lake Burley Griffin, where coach Reinhold Batschi tuned their technique and timing to approach perfection and made some seat changes. This was the first time rowing had been back in the Commonwealth Games since 1962, and Australia were the title holders in 8s for that long period. The Edinburgh Games will be remembered by many because of the boycotts by the African countries at the last minute, but rowing was not affected by the boycotts, and the national crews of New Zealand, Australia and Canada, together with England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, were to make for a rowing competition of the highest standard. Strathclyde Country Park was the venue of a new rowing course between Edinburgh and Glasgow. The 8 knew why they'd been training in cold, miserable Canberra when they got to see the conditions which prevailed at Strathclyde. The 8s race, a straight-out final, was shaping up to be a race of great interest and quality. New Zealand had been the world champions in 1982 and 1983 and had a reputation in 8-oared rowing second to none in the Western world. They hadn't raced in Lucerne and were an unknown quantity. England had won all the 8s races in Europe before Australia came on the scene at Lucerne, and they were second to Australia at Lucerne. Canada were the Olympic champions from 1984. It was apparent that it was not a race that could be won by a crew without control and cool heads in the difficult conditions both at the start and during the course. Neville Oliver, the ABC commentator, is an unabashed Australian rowing enthusiast, as his commentary of the race shows.
1:21.82, so not much between them. And already these two crews, strangely to me, have bolted away from the other boats in the race. Australia and New Zealand settling down at about 36 or 37 strokes to the minute. And I think we could expect fireworks from the Australian boat in the third 500. New Zealand, we've been told by their rowing people here, this is a crew that's out for experience. They're building a crew for the Seoul Regatta, but I bet they're happy with what they're doing at the moment, as they just showed Australia in the middle stages of the second 500 metres. The crowd in the grandstand starting to get really involved with this race now. Back in third place would be Canada. I better keep you in touch with that. And then England. But Australia and New Zealand have separated out from the field. And I've got a great deal of confidence that Australia, with the ability that they showed at Lucerne, could take out the gold in this race. Australia beautifully held up by Steve Evans at around 36 strokes to the minute in these cross-following conditions. Somebody's gone for a swim. I can tell you, sir, you won't win the race at that pace. But the Australians and the New Zealanders have now taken more than a length and a quarter out of the field. A little bit hard. That camera shot that we're looking at there is just a little bit deceptive. Don't think that Australia is all that far down, although New Zealand have had a superb second 500 metres, and they've got about half a length, I'd reckon, on the Australians. 2:48, so they're going to row a very fast time. And there you can see clear water now between Australia and Canada, and England back in fourth place. But the Australians now know they've got an enormous battle on their hands with the New Zealanders as they come down into the third 500 metres of the event, and they're on opposite sides of the course. Australia in two, bit of water coming up from the New Zealand boat there, and that will be to the advantage of Australia. Every time it's just getting a little bit untidy there in the New Zealand boat, and Australia still tapping it along beautifully as they move into the third 500. Now this is where we would anticipate that the Australians would surge, but they've got a real battle on their hands with the All Blacks over on the far side of the lake. Quite rough over there on lane 6 too. You can see the water licking up around the bow rigger as they come through with 750 metres to go, and you can see the bow of the Australian boat there. And because of the parallax error from the shore-based cameras, it's deceptive. I think Australia's in front, and we would have expected a big third 500 metres from them. New Zealand a little untidy again over there on the far side, not handling the conditions, and you can see the Australians sitting up and tapping it along. In fact, New Zealand just had a minor crab on the bow side of their boat, and Australia shoot to the lead. Australia in front now by about a canvas over New Zealand. Make that half a length as they bore down towards the 1,500 metre mark. And the error that we're seeing there really doesn't show the Australian lead. Australia have taken over the lead in the 8th race as they go through the 1,500 metre mark, 4:17, and Australia by about half a length to New Zealand. A big improvement coming from the Canadian boat, but still clear water between them. I think it'd be a massive accident now for Australia if they drop this. They come down with about 400 metres to go, and it's Australia. They probably need to watch the Canadians. I think they've got the measure of the New Zealanders. It's quite rough out there and very difficult conditions for the Oz, but the Oz still in front. Steve Evans starting to wind them towards the finish. New Zealand perhaps coming again on the outside of the Australia, still there by about half a length. Coming into the last 250 metres now, the Australians know that there's a gold medal there for the taking if they're good enough, and I think they are. Canada still surging down in that middle station. You can see the Canadian boat starting to come in. There's Doyle, Caterson, the Australian coxswain, telling them that the line is close. Through the 250 metre mark to go, and Australia will need to watch Canada. The half a length in front of them. Australia, can they maintain it? England is in fact in 3rd place, but Australia still there. Australia and New Zealand on the outside, with England surging in the middle and Canada in 4th place. But it looks like Australia's gold medal. They're about 3/4 of a length in front. New Zealand coming at them again on the outside. This is going to be a close go, but Steve Evans has the Australians winding up now. 38 strokes to the minute, 39. You beauties, that's about half a length I've got on it now. Put down the glasses, folks. This is a gold medal to Australia. They defend the title they won back in 1962. A magnificent victory. 2nd England, but it's Australia by 3/4 of a length on the line. And what a fabulous victory to the Oz. 2nd will be England. Oh, close for 3rd between Canada and New Zealand. But look at the Australian boat. They are delighted. And I can tell you that the man in the box here next to me, John Boltby, is equally delighted, the Secretary of the Australian Rowing Council, and is entitled to be. The resurgence in Australian rowing is well and truly on the way, I can tell you. With that...
So Australia retained their Commonwealth 8's title, but amidst the excitement, their minds were clearly on bigger and better things. The World Championships just 18 days away. Despite their successes to date, the Australians had not yet met the Russian world champions, who had only one change from their 1985 crew. Nor had they met the Americans, who, whilst Australia was winning the Commonwealth Games, had defeated the Russians in Moscow in the Goodwill Games. Also, it was well known that the ever-improving Italians were a crew who would peak carefully for the World Championships.
Gathering of some of the best rowers in the world in this group.
The winner of the gold medal for the men's 8 Australia, represented by M. Doyle, M. Batten, J. Galloway, M. McKay, A. Popa, J. Tomkins, I. Popa, S. Evans, and D. Caterson.
Now, where do we start? Fantastic. Steve Evans takes the first of the gold medals. And a marvellous
The winner of the silver medal for the men's eights, England, represented by J. Spencer Jones, P. Broughton, J. Garrett, J. Maxey, T. Dillon, M. Buckingham, S. Pio, R. Stanhope, and V. Thomas.
Well, the podium is hardly big enough for our boys to fit onto. They've just about been invested with their gold medals. I think 2 to go. And a very big Australian contingent in the crowd here at Strathclyde today. And you can imagine that they're delighted with the performance of our 8. And of course can look forward to some good things later in the program. In the very next race we see our outstanding lightweight sculler Peter Anthony. Later in the day, the ladies' 8. Richard Powell, the heavyweight sculler. And Dale Caterson at last gets his gold medal.
The winner of the bronze medal for the men's 8.
And the Australian 8 jubilant.
Australia was soon to learn what formidable opponents the Russians and the Americans were to be. In rows which were uncharacteristically unsettled, the Australian crew were left at the start by the Russians in the heat. Then in the do-or-die repechage, the Americans were in control in taking out the event, whilst the Australians, by running second, made the final and the opportunity for a medal. So on finals day, with a slight tailwind blowing, Australia lined up against the United States, the Soviet Union, Italy, East Germany and West Germany in the greatest rowing event of the year.
And so the final race of the day, the final race, the grand final of the men's 8, the final race of the 1986 World Championships gets through the first 100 metres off the start. The blue ribboned event this with the Italians and the Soviet Union in lanes 3 and 4 as the fastest qualifiers, the ones who went straight through without having to re-qualify via the repechage. They nose out in front as the Soviet Union settle at 42 against the Italians at 42 also, neck and neck in the lead. Back in second position, 3 crews are level. We've got the German Democratic Republic, Australia, and the United States fall back slightly out of that pattern and lying in 6th, trailing by about half a length on the leaders, the German Federal Republic in lane 6. 4 of these crews met at Lucerne when Australia won the honours ahead of the German Democratic Republic, with Great Britain third. 4 of these crews, these countries, were represented at Hazevinkel in Belgium at these championships last year when the Soviet Union gained the honours on that occasion ahead of the Italians. These crews were the 2 fastest qualifying times through.
Would the relaxation and control that was a mark of this Australian crew and which seemed to be absent during the heat and the repechage return to enable them to perform at their best? Was their best good enough? Had the Russians and the Americans had something in reserve in the heat and the repechage? Would the Italians pull out a superb row like they had done to win the silver medal the previous year? And what of East Germany, already boasting a number of world champions? Could they return to form for this final? With the British crew eliminated from the final, the Australians were sentimental favourites amongst the English spectators, but the money was on the powerful Soviet Union crew.
The Soviet Union, striking 38, maintain a canvas lead ahead of Italy in lane 4, also at 38. Another margin back, a canvas back, the German Democratic Republic in bronze medal position at the moment, but now moving up on them, the Australians, the Commonwealth gold medalists in lane 1. They're now neck and neck for bronze medal position with the Australians at 39, just a pip higher than the two leaders. Back in 5th place, the United States. They're only 3/4 of a length back on the leaders, but the German Federal Republic in lane 6, still with a length and a half to make up. À mi-chemin du parcours, toujours en première position, c'est l'Union soviétique qui mène par une demi-longueur du bateau en tête de l'Italie en 2e place, mais l'Italie a partie engagée avec l'Australie. We're just through the halfway stage, and Australia have come on with a big push in lane 1. Australia have moved rapidly through Italy into silver medal position. Australia move at 39. There was no increase in the rate, but they put the pressure on and they've come smoothly through. So the Soviet Union in the lead by a third of a length ahead of Australia. 38 leads 39 for the two leading positions. Italy have yet to make the challenge. In 4th place now, the United States of America have moved through the German Democratic Republic, and still in 6th position on the far side, the German Federal Republic. À 750 mètres et toujours en première position, c'est l'Union soviétique qui mène pas seulement une pointe à bateau en tête de l'Australie en 2e place. 3e, c'est l'Italie et 4e, les États-Unis. 5e, la République démocratique d'Allemagne et 6e, la République fédérale d'Allemagne. So out in the lead for gold medal, challenging the Australians. They won a gold medal last month at the Commonwealth Games. They're maintaining their striking rate at 39. A really sustained burst from the Australians. They go through neck and neck. Now they're in the lead by the narrowest of margins ahead of the Soviet Union. Have they made that burst too early? 500 meters to go. Australia lead the way home ahead of the Soviet Union. 3/4 of a length back on the Soviets. The United States have now moved ahead into bronze medal position ahead of the Italians. The German Democratic Republic in lane 5 hold on to 5th position ahead of the German Federal Republic. But now the Australians begin to lengthen out. Now they take the rate up even further, down into the closing stages with 400 meters to go, because the Australians are now striking 40. They had it at 39 through the second half of this race. This was a really early burn, but they maintained it and they've taken it up. 250 meters to go in the final of the men's 8. In gold medal position, Australia by half a length ahead of the Soviet Union. The United States now come into bronze medal. The Australians are at 41. Can they take the rate up any higher, because they've got 3/4 of a length ahead of the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union has no reply to make. Now it's nearly a length in the lead. One gold followed by another for the Australians. They now got a length ahead of the Soviet Union, who have only half a length ahead of the United States. The United States half a length to make up, is there to take the silver away from the Soviet Union. Now the Italians coming through strongly on lane 4, but they can't make that. They've pressed it too late. Austria down to the line with Australia leading from the Soviet Union ahead of the United States.
To what is this success to be attributed? Reinhold Batschi commented that the greatest quality of this 8 was that they could translate what they'd learned in training into races and produce the optimal performance in each race. Planning and the quality of preparation in Australia led to the crew performing as it did. The crew had a technique with a lot of feel for the boat, and it was in the best physical and psychological state. Harmony, confidence and cooperation in the crew led to a crew of great self-discipline. To win a world championship by over 4 seconds in such formidable company speaks for itself. But if there is a lesson to be learned, it is that such an achievement is not only possible but open for many to emulate. And with the lure of Olympic success in 1988 and of success in the World Championships to be held in Australia in 1990, to aim for the ultimate success in rowing is not just a schoolboy dream.
The result of the final of the men's 8. First, Australia. Second, the Soviet Union. Third, the United States of America. Fourth, Italy. 5th, the German Democratic Republic, and 6th, the German Federal Republic.